Want to see something insane? You can do some craziness like this. Look at that, 26 speed. You can slow them down even more if you want to use Malakoth's 10 speed. And as soon as that wears off, you use the Curse of Onrir. So they're still rocking 23 speed. And after all that, you can net them down so they can't even move for the next 16 seconds. Overkill? I think not, because I decided to bring this into a tournament. So game number 1, I brought a max range build because there's no way they're gonna catch me if they're permanently being slowed, right? Unfortunately, my opponent did bring a huge army, which kind of counters this playstyle, but because I have a lot of cavalry, and actually more range units than he has cavalry, his cavalry really only disrupt like half my range units. Plus I got Malakoths to slow down his cavalry and do a bit of damage, and all of my unoccupied range units can just fire away. This is a situation 3 minutes into the game, and he's looking pretty rough. Sure, he has dwarf warriors, but half of my range units are armor piercing. He's never gonna catch me, and even though he has 3 capture points, he's not very high in tickets. Once his army's all mopped up, there's really nothing he can do to stop me from triple capping, and Astrogoth, well, I can just shoot him to death. Pretty crazy that we were able to win here, because this campaign looking stack is not really supposed to be working. So let's see how a slightly different slowmax build works in game number 2. I'm up against the best player in the world right now, at least probably, Charix, and he's playing as Skaven. This matchup is mostly going to revolve around how well our range units can be kept alive. He does manage to catch a couple of Waywatchers with some Triads. I am able to punish them though with my Malakoths, but he does have 2 Jezzails in his backline. One, a normal variant, and another is the Regiment Renown, which stays stealthed even while firing. However, I am able to squeeze some cavalry onto his Jezzails, but this may have been a little bit of a misplay, because as you can see here, all my cavalry is getting surrounded, and that means my Waywatchers are a little bit exposed now. Not to mention his Jezzail still got a lot of damage on them, and he's starting to capture my points. Things are not terrible though, because I still got 1 Waywatcher alive, and I still have some very, very good infantry. Dryads will essentially uptrade into any unit that he summons onto the battlefield, but against Doomflayers and Rat Ogres, they're gonna need a little bit more support. And this is when things start going a little bit south, because without my cavalry, I can't deal with those tools. My Waywatchers get chased down, and I slowly but surely get outtraded. Even with all my slows, I don't have any cavalry to capitalize on it, and with Charix staying away from my caster, I can't even catch his skirmishers. He manages to get the win, but I assure you, we will be getting our revenge. Because this is a Swiss tournament, so 1 loss isn't gonna knock us out. This next match is gonna be up against Dwarves though, and we extremely lucked out here. He essentially brought an army that is built to deal with a rush Wood Elf army. Typically, you know, they have a lot of armor piercing, anti-infantry, and that left him super undefended against my ranged maxing. And remember, this build takes advantage of slow stacking too, so I have Chill Wind and Poison, which will reduce his speed even more. This makes it essentially impossible for him to catch my units, which are outranging him, and that means he's just gonna get slowly picked apart. Just be wary about running this build on ladder, because dwarves are really tough to beat as wood elves. Their super high missile resist makes them a pain to shoot to death, and even though I had more or less a counter build, the match is still kind of close. A faction that struggles against this build way more though is Khorne. Usually high armor and shields is really good for rushing down the wood elves. They just don't have the DPS to kill everything before it reaches your lines. But this right here is a slow max build with nets. So I fly on over to his elite Chaos Knights of Khorne and fill them with as many arrows as I can. And my opponent, now knowing that my net is on cooldown, sends in his other unit of cavalry. But I got the Curse of Onrir, which slows him down by 25%, and Poison Arrows, which brings them down by another 15. This makes his cavalry, at full charge, basically not move at all. They get the most lackluster charge ever on my archers, followed by a full barrage of arrows. After that, he essentially has nothing left, so I use my last net on Skulltaker, give him a little bit of a right click, and we get to power trip for a little bit. because all my archers do magic damage, his physical resist means nothing, and he shortly falls. Things go so smoothly, in fact, I didn't even realize his build had Chosen of Corn, because we were just doing so well and they weren't really seeing combat anyways. This brings us to our 5th game, now in the semifinals, up against Charix again, who, may I remind you, is one of the best players in the game right now. I changed my build some, knowing that I can't sack my Cav to dive into his backline, and instead I use a Flying Lord to cast Melkoths on his Jezzails. After that, a couple arrows of Kurnos finish them off, and that's the first major threat out of the picture. He still has a rather absurd number of Skaven though, so I'm gonna need to up the DPS to clear them out before the end of the match. So first things first, I give up my home point to goad his melee units forwards, thus giving my Sylvan Knights in his backline a little bit more space to attack his ranged. I'm then able to win back my home point using my skirmishers, and with his lines so spread out, I'm finally able to use my cavalry in a way that doesn't get them killed immediately. However, the battle is still very hard fought. He uses Deathmaster Snickage to very nearly kill my lord, and while I have killed off most of his forward range tools, I don't really have anything to kill his Plague Claw catapult. It's a little too risky for me to dive his backline too, since my cavalry's just too expensive. So we summon in our secret tool, that being just some basic normal archers. You see, they're very important because my opponent is playing defensive right now, and that's a very good way for him to start uptrading and possibly get back into the game. But since I have 2 archers, which do a lot more damage than his Plague Claw catapult, he has to advance towards me, and that means I can secure the victory by uptrading. It gets scary close though. I'd say this matchup is favored for the Wood Elves, so the fact that I had to fight so hard for this win is truly a testament to his micro. The last game, however, is just gonna be a testament to how powerful this build can be. We're up against the Dark Elves, who went for an infantry max, which would make you think they're advantaged against us, but I got a lot of tricks up my sleeve. After dealing with the Scourge Runner chariots, my opponent tries to do a big surround on my army, but I have a way to catch him out a little bit early and attack one flank before he can engage. Using Awakening of the Woods and Melkoths, I slow down his far flank to a crawl, and this lets all my archers pummel his spears. He tries to retreat, but to no avail, and even though he gets some cavalry in my backline, it doesn't really go very well because I have cavalry summons right on top of him. And with his army severely diminished, I use more slows to prevent him from rushing in, and fire away to my heart's content. Like, just look at this. He's trying to charge in with his Dark Riders, but I just have so many range units and slows, he's not gonna catch me at all. In fact, it causes a mass rout, bringing in so many units, and I can just escort them off the battlefield now. Some more Dark Riders come on in because Melkoths is on cooldown, but they just get netted and blasted into oblivion. And to really put the nail in the coffin, his last cavalry unit gets hit by the ultimate slow combo. They basically just sit there while getting pummeled by arrows, routed, and at this point my opponent has nothing left. So is this build good? Honestly, it's a lot better than you'd expect. Maybe not an ultra meta Wood Elf build, but fun for sure. At least for me. I'm sure my opponents were having a terrible time. And if you want to see me do more crazy builds in the future, you can just comment below. A like is a really nice way to get more people to watch these videos, and I hope to see you next time.